Hello everybody and welcome to the Creative Corner, an opportunity for you to get inside the head, the heart, the soul of authors like Gavin, who is the author of the Little Book of Noticing, and we're going to have a bit of a chat to him today about the book, about why he did this and where it's going to go. Gavin McGahey, thanks for being here, mate.
Thank you, Ocean. It's a pleasure.
Awesome. Now look, we've got to find out a bit about you, so tell us about Gavin. Who are you?
60-year-old, father of three. Grandfather, and my youngest being 2 years old, my eldest being 36 and then 30. So fatherhood at 59 was certainly different for me, but absolutely loving it. And I've spent most of my life in the collision repair industry. I run my own software company called Planning Plus Software. We have clients in all different countries, and that has been the majority of my journey, along with I had a long marriage and then that came to an end. And so since that breakup of that marriage, I've connected with Melissa and we created Ari, and Ari chose us. So now parenting again, which is fabulous. And over the last few years, or quite probably 15 years ago, I started to learn a little bit more about personal development and self-help. And that was a really interesting journey. It took me over to the States, went to the Pike Place Fish Market at Seattle, and I learned from a very different consultant by the name of Jim Bergquist. And at the end of the 2 days of his workshop, it was around about 3/4 of the way through the second day, the penny dropped on what his learnings were about. And they were nothing to do with putting more knowledge into me. It was about letting go of a lot of knowledge and just coming back to a place of understanding yourself as a human being. So that sort of ticked me off on the journey towards, you could call it spirituality, enlightenment, peace, joy, love, whatever else you want to.
How long ago was this when you were in Seattle?
This was probably over 15 years ago now.
Oh wow, okay. So it's been quite a journey.
Yeah, quite a journey. And when I came back from that, I actually did some workshopping around what I'd learned from Jim, called the technology of being. But it was probably just a bit too soon. It was maybe a bit before its time. Well, now with a lot of how we can broadcast our message globally, it's a bit more mainstream now. Consciousness and self-awareness and self-love and understanding yourself and who we are being as a human being. That is becoming a bit more mainstream, and people have a lot more awareness around it.
It has become a lot more acceptable. So tell us, what is the Little Book of Noticing all about?
Well, the Little Book of Noticing is about letting go of what we judge and how we can bring peace into our life by making one simple change. And that change is letting go of judgment and turning it into things that you notice. Because quite often what happens is an event takes place, a conversation takes place, an email comes in, a text message gets read, and the thinking mind, which is quite often driven by the ego, normally then slips you straight into judgment mode. You know, how dare they, why would they, that's not me, you're wrong, I'm right, etc. And when that happens, there's a chemical reaction that takes place in the body that fires the emotion. And that chemical reaction normally lasts for around about 90 seconds. Now, when that chemical reaction happens, what takes place is you go into reactive mode. And the reactive mode, which is triggered by the chemical reaction, then determines how you're going to fire back, how you're going to protect yourself, how you're going to inflict your reality into the reality of what you've just heard. And that's judgment mode.
Right.
But when you can step outside of that and go into noticing mode, so we then say, what am I noticing about this email that I'm just reading? What am I noticing about this text message that I've just received? What am I noticing about the conversation that I'm having here with Ocean right now? You come from a totally different place. And that puts you into a place of responsiveness, not reaction. So you can then build on how you're going to respond. And sometimes there's no need to respond.
True. So you've used that knowledge, that insight in storytelling within this book, correct?
Exactly. Yeah.
And so how did the idea to write a book about what you'd learned and to put this together, where'd that come from?
That came to me when I was laying in a hospital bed recovering from an operation. I was laying in hospital. I'd had a prostate operation. I was laying there, I had these compression stockings on my legs that were going on and off, on and off, on and off, like a tennis match that had no ending. And I was up all night, and around about 2:30 a.m, I had a download. Now, if anyone's ever experienced a universal download or a pivotal moment or a transformational moment in their life, they'll relate to what I'm saying. So I had this download come in, and it said, you need to write a book. The title of the book is A Little Book of Noticing. This is what it's all about. This is what it's going to look like. This is what it's going to feel like. This is the impact that it's going to have on the world, and get to work.
That's pretty succinct download, isn't it?
Yeah.
And when was that?
That was 2 years ago, February just gone.
Wow, okay. So we're sitting here in April. It's quite significant that 2 years later you're now here and it's published. What did you learn over those 2 years writing the book, you know?
I learned an enormous amount about myself, an enormous amount about the whole experience, the whole process, the whole publishing concept. I'd already published a book for my industry, but that was an industry-specific book. This book was it come through me. It came from my heart. You know, my heart opened up, and all this energy flooded in and said, "This is how you can help people make a difference in their life. This is how you can help people work through some of their own challenges by sharing your challenges, and how you converted judgments into noticing, and the peace that it's brought into your own life."
The stories flow really, really well. I mean, like from an editorial viewpoint, there wasn't actually a lot of structural change to what you'd written. Were you surprised on how easy it was to write them and how they came from you?
The storytelling part for me is all about when you are in an allowing space.
Right.
And it's the same approach that I take into my work as well. It's being in that allowing space of when it needs to come to you and through you, it will come to you and through you. When you try to force an outcome, that's when you get in its way. That's when you block the energy that you need to be in the receptive mode of. You need to align yourself with that energy of being in the receptive mode to say, okay, I'm ready for I'm ready for another story.
Mm-hmm. Was it that easy? Or and it just came from that?
And it just came from that.
So how much time did you actually spend writing? If you were to block that out and go, okay, so I spent over that 2 years, how long?
It could have been a total of probably maybe 2 months.
That's fantastic. Really opening yourself up to let the universe give you what you needed, which is pretty profound.
Yeah, because the stories were my stories. They were about experiences that I've had myself, and then taking those experiences in short form story and saying, well, this is, if I take that story and then I place a judgment mode on it, that's how the story could have unfolded.
Yeah, okay, so you'd adapt that to those lessons.
Yes.
I want to talk about the artwork. And you guys have to, I'll put something up on screen, you can see a few of them there. This artwork's absolutely amazing. How did the artwork come about, and how easy was it for the artist to connect her work to the story?
That was another universal manifestation. And I'm so big on that, that's how I roll. Now, I was talking to one of my software clients who is in upstate New York, and I was having a conversation with Diane, and I said, I've just started writing my self-help book, and it's coming together really nicely, and I'm thinking about maybe putting some illustrations in it. I'm not quite sure yet, but that's what I'm feeling. I'm feeling that it needs these illustrations. And she said, oh, my husband's just finished writing a children's book, and he used this illustrator. Her name's Olivia, and she's local to upstate New York. And I said, we were meant to have this conversation today. I said, give me Olivia's details. I have a daughter named Olivia. So you just got to look for you got to connect the dots,
isn't
the
it?
synchronicity of events. So I contacted Olivia and had a Zoom meeting with her, and we just stepped into it. She loved the concept from the start, and we said, let me write each story. I'll send you the story. You feel into the illustration that you feel comes to you for the story. I'll feel into the illustration that I feel comes to me for the story, and we'll collaborate on that.
That's a lot of creative freedom to give. That's amazing, and the result's been fantastic. You were spot on. They just completed the book, really, and added that element to it. It's just going to make for an incredible experience to read it and look at the artwork and connect to it. Let's talk about the publishing journey for a minute. What did you learn there? Working with myself, the team. Tell me about that.
Right, I learnt patience.
Yeah, every author says this.
Patience is a big part of it, but what I learnt and what I applied through that journey was my taking on board what I'm now taking to the world. Is when you have someone from your domain is, your professionalism is the publishing world. I'm a guy in creative space that's writing a book that I believe is going to change the world. Okay, so I hand it over to your team, and then I'll gather feedback on it. Now, I've got a choice there when I gather that feedback to go into judgment mode about your editor might be saying this and might be directing me this way, or might have said that that's what it is, and think about this, think about that. Or I could go into noticing mode to notice the feedback that's coming to me, to then allow me the time to process that feedback and the subtle changes from the editing process to then flow through me.
That's why you're such a magical author to work with. You're very, very kind in saying that you don't agree with something, and very accepting on others. But the end result was that collaboration between people that understood your vision, and to be able to bring it to life in a way that you saw it and connect it in a marketing sense as well, because we know how important that part of the journey is. Publishing is maybe 30% of the journey, and the rest of it's all in marketing and promotion. Who's the book aimed at? Who's the target market for the Little Book of Noticing?
Now, I get a lot of people asking me that, and you get taught concepts about marketing and finding your dot and finding your niche and going after it. And to me, I let all that go, because this book can help anyone that is open to just reading it. And it could be a 60-year-old man that's just finished his corporate life, and he's going, I'm just stepping into retirement. I'm used to being so busy. I'm used to being so in my head. I'm used to having so much going on. How am I going to find some peace now? And how can I actually shift what I've been doing for the last 30 years into a place of stillness and a change in my life? Or it could be for a young mum that's struggling with the kids and trying to work out where she sits now, and she's got all these different opinions on how to raise your children coming at you, and all these based on other people's beliefs and other people's conditionings, and she's trying to process that, and at the time she's just struggling to find and reconnect to herself. It could be the dad in his 30s that's, we've got the house, we've got the mortgage, we've got the car, we've got the boat, we've got what's next on the queue, because nothing else seems to be making us happy, and we seem to be getting more, but living less. So I thought about that, and I thought, I don't have a target market. It's a global market of whoever is drawn to it.
I think there's this, I speak a lot about this with my family and friends, about the conditioning that we've experienced over the last, quite a few decades, and how maybe the last 5 to 10 years there's been a large shift for people to break free of it a little bit. I still obviously function competently in society and do what we need to do, but to step out of that conditioned thinking that maybe has come through the education system of what our life is supposed to be. I think if you're going to, from my perspective as your publisher, if I was to ever say, what's the demographic of this book, is that people that want to step out of that conditioning, that want an opportunity to think in a different way, and this would be a tool to get there. Because when you read the stories and that they are yours, and so from a reader's perspective they're someone else's, the idea for me is that when I've read them and looked at the artwork, I'm going to connect one of my life experiences to this very same story and how I could have approached it differently, which is like break free of that conditioning. Would that be fair?
Yeah, absolutely, totally. You've hit the nail on the head. That's the whole purpose of the book, is so that when a reader is reading a story, they have this reflection in this moment in their own mind, and it might be a very similar scenario just played out differently, but they then start to process, well, how could have I managed that from a different perspective?
Not the judgment, the noticing.
Outcome.
Yeah. That's very intriguing. Have you had feedback on it yet?
We've had some great feedback on it.
Share?
Lots of, I gave it to some family members to read, and it actually even opened up some family members on to just who I am and where I am and what I represent in life now. And other people that I've just given it to just have a read of have just come back, and all of the feedback is based around, I never thought of it like that.
Which is great for you as the author and what you're wanting to get.
Yeah, I never thought of approaching the simplest of things in life from that way to even complex things in life that way. And one example was a mate of mine, the very next day after he read the book, he was driving into work and he pulled up at a set of lights and he saw a woman on the sidewalk that was totally covered in tattoos. And he immediately went into judgment mode about her. And then he had a reflection and he thought, hang on a minute, that's not fair, that's not right. I don't know this person. So what if I went into noticing mode about her? Well, then you come from a state of curiosity. Wow, I bet those tattoos have got a world of stories within them. I'd be curious to know just how some of them came to be. And that immediately opens you up to, instead of that preconditioned belief of, because you might not have a body full of tattoos, why should that person have a body full of tattoos? And that's not in your belief, that's not in your conditioning. So then you direct it through judgment. But so if you let go of that and go, well, wow, I'd be curious to sit down with that lady and say, share us a little bit about your story.
That's so good. Like, it's such an early stage to get feedback, friends, family, colleagues, and immediately what you wanted this book to do is happening to that tight, close circle. Because usually when an author brings a book to life and they're giving it to family and friends, there's a little bit of, they'll tell you what you want to hear. But in this case, they've actually put it into action. So you must be really excited about putting this out there to the masses, the ones that you don't know, and seeing what comes from that.
Yeah, absolutely. And within myself, I've even prepared myself for whatever feedback comes back to me, because it's feedback. And I'll take on all of the feedback. I'll just take whatever's grandiose and whatever's not so grandiose, and if I can take a little bit of learning from it, and the feedback that I've had so far, especially from a couple of family members, has been quite humbling. And it's like you say, family and friends, sometimes it's like, oh yeah, well, we'll just let him know what he needs to know. And whatever. We won't, we'll hold back on what we really think till we're in a different conversation.
Sure, but that's the point, is that they've acted on what they've read in the book, and they've looked at situations in a different way, which, I mean, that's the core of why you're making the change.
That's the core of why it was there.
Yeah.
Why we wrote it.
So what's next for you as a writer? What's coming up next, Gav?
Since we locked that one, put that one to bed, I have had so many things happening in my world. It's amazing. The Little Book of Noticing, from that has come what I have evolved as the 4 principles of the art of noticing. So I feel there's a book around the art of noticing. And I've also become a certified breath master. So I can coach people on breathing techniques to help them change state and just once again bring peace into their life quickly. or raise their state to prepare them for an event, or it's called up-regulation, down-regulation. And we can also take people through what we call deep somatic breathwork journeys, so we can help them release trauma and release suppressed emotions and move stuff, in a 90-minute session. Really powerful stuff. So
Ooh,
I
what
think
a journey.
I've got a combination of both of those that are just wanting to be unfolded and shared out.
Far out. This is an exciting future coming up for you, Gavin.
Yeah.
Look, I'd like you to read a short passage from the book. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Let the viewers have a bit of a taste of the Little Book of Noticing.
Jump on board. Come into the world of Gavin.
It's an exciting one by the sounds of it, mate.
No, it is. It really is. And I'll just quickly hit on, because I thank you for asking that question about what's coming up, because it's interesting after you close off the book to then start to feel what's next. And I'd had a lot of people that I'd followed, the likes of Eckhart Tolle and Wayne Dyer and Joe Dispenza and Abraham Hicks and people in this field. And Don Miguel Ruiz was one, and Don Miguel Ruiz wrote the book called The Four Agreements. And I thought, well, why can't I put a mark on the world with the 4 principles of noticing, or the 4 principles of the art of noticing? And so I created them as, number 1, stay in your own lane. Number 2, be your authentic self. Number 3, be where you are. And number 4, always look for ways to feel good. And so in any position in your life, you can go to one of those 4 principles of the art of noticing and apply it. And always look for ways to feel good, even when you don't feel that great. Because when you can step into that belief and that future, once again, you're unpacking yourself to bring more peace into your life.
And those elements are there. They're there if you look for them.
Yeah, they are. So thank you. I digressed a little bit.
No worries at all, mate.
Okay, the Little Book of Noticing does not want you to climb a 7-step mountain, as it is not a 7-step guide to anything. I want you to feel like you have reached the summit of your mountain in your mind. There were no ravines to traverse, deep snow to trudge through, or steep inclines to tackle as you made your ascent. You took your time to walk the trail that wound back and forth as you zigzagged up the gentle slopes. Along the way, you noticed all of the little things, like the colour and smell of the flowers that lined the trail, the wildlife that scurried away as you came into their view, the birds that whistled from within the tree canopy, the crispness of the air with the awareness of each breath you took, and the stillness in your mind. Notice the peace and the feelings within you as you sit atop your mountain. Your mind is clear and you feel at one with yourself. This is your space, your mountain to stay on top of, your place to go to in your mind when you feel the pressures of life closing in on you.
Wow. May the journey begin.
May the journey begin.
Gavin, I want to thank you so much for sitting down with me today, talking about the book and what it took to get here. It's going to be an exciting few months and years coming from you, and I can't wait to see how that transpires. Thank you, buddy.
Thank you, Ocean. Thanks for all your assistance with your team, because without your team, we wouldn't be sitting here today having this conversation. So it's a collective effort.
It is.
And a collective energy more than effort.
It takes a village. So for you guys, to get a copy of the Little Book of Noticing, you just need to follow that link on the bottom of the screen. Go and check it out. See what else is on Gavin's website, along with social media connections. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on The Creative Corner.